Okay, everybody, this is my spoiler review of Succession Season 4, Episode 6, Living Plus. Before I jump into my review, please subscribe. I am so close to hitting 30K. I'm about 500 subs away. It helped in so many ways. I'm really trying to get that Rotten Tomatoes approval. I appreciate everyone who's already done it, but if you're really enjoying this right now, it could really help me. We're so close and every sub counts, so I really appreciate it. You can unsubscribe after if you want. Just got to get there, please. Okay, so for someone like me, this episode was very special and was probably the most satisfying episode for me just as a fan of the show, long term, as being someone who my favorite character is Kendall since the start. And every character is so flawed in this show, and that's what makes him so fascinating, especially Kendall. But there's something so endearing about him that's made me gravitate towards his character a lot, and deep down, I'm always rooting for the guy. So this was a special episode for me in particular. But let's just jump into everything that happens here. So just speaking of Kendall, because this is really a Kendall-centric episode, this is a character whose highs are really high and his lows are really, really low. And it's mostly seeing his lows in this show. But this is an episode we see that ceiling Kendall has, that high that he has. And as I watched it, I really just started to believe more and more that his father, Logan, did underline his name and knows deep down he was the best candidate to replace him and is the most suited for the position of CEO. I'm going to show everything in this episode how they highlight that. So just from the start of the episode, it was really great seeing that we got more Brian Cox time with Logan being on the screen in any form. It was cool to see him doing the intro for Living Plus. And it's so fascinating seeing Kendall watch in this opening scene, him saying, "You're as bad as my idiot kids," to the director and to the makeup artist on that commercial. But you see how Kendall's able to brush it aside and use it to his advantage. He gets smart ideas throughout this episode, and that goes to him having Greg edit what his father says, making what his father said even better and work in his favor. What happens here in this episode is Kendall is laser focused, and that's one of his best traits, and that he's very instinctual and he's not afraid to go for it, which you could see the problem sometimes with Shiv and with Roman is they let their emotions with their father kind of blur them too much and let him have too much of a say in their own heads, and that they sometimes are afraid to just go for it like Kendall is, and that burns both of them in the end in this episode. Now, those have been good qualities from in other situations, but in this particular case, it really hurt both of them. But what this episode did so well for me was it really fooled you as an audience because it knew what you were thinking the whole time this episode, which I love. It knew that we're expecting Kendall to mess up, as are all the other characters in the show expecting Kendall to mess up here. But what they did so well was Roman, you knew deep down, he believed in what Kendall was doing here. And that he did have doubts because of Kendall's history. He knows his brother really well. And Shiv played on those doubts. And Roman is kicking himself by the end of this episode that he followed those doubts and didn't go with his gut to stick with Kendall here in his huge success. But you see that a lot of this smart move by Kendall and leaning into Living Plus is his play to push Mattson out of the deal. And that it's interesting that this is backfiring already with Shiv being on Mattson's good side and him wanting her as her inside woman. And that Mattson does a Kendall type mistake at the end of this here with his tweet of this Nazi slogan. That's not going to look good. He literally put the dagger into himself here. As Kendall wanted to up the number here to get over the 192 that Mattson had offered, that he wanted to make it a number that he can't reach to push him out. And then him to tweet himself into just oblivion was just a dumb move by Mattson. So again, changing what you expect to happen in a Kendall situation where you think Kendall's going to make an error like that. It's so interesting with the character of Shiv, though. As Tom says, she's scheduling her grief here about her father, but also feeling hurt again by her brothers not including her in this decision to put Mattson out, just feeling out of the loop. And that, again, they're constantly lying to her face. And what was interesting about Tom and Shiv's relationship is how complicated it is, which makes it written really well to me, and how it shows with their relationship how money gets in the way of all these type of relationships when you have two very rich people in this elite status, and how that is always going to take precedent over the actual love of the relationship. And that's what Tom's getting at with, to me, Tom's best dialogue of the show to date, where he's like, all my life, I've been thinking a little bit about money, how to get it and how to keep it. And he's like, you didn't ask me in, you kept me out. And he's like, I really love my career and my money, the suits, the watches. And he's like, and if you think that shall, throw out all your stuff for love, come live with me in a trailer park. I thought this was great. And it was truth. Like she says, that Tom's giving these truth bombs, but it's truth about both of them too, that at the end of the day, that's still going to go over their relationship, and that's why it's going to struggle. And I think that's why it's true to life, right? With having that you get that wealthy, that your love for the wealth, your love for the products is going to take precedent over maybe decisions to keep your regular love with a person. But they can laugh about it, and somehow, to me, kind of works between them acknowledging that now, and that this is actually a healthy conversation they're having, and why maybe the relationship will actually get stronger from this talk. And you see she's backing him by the end of the episode about his idea of hosting this election party, which I think is going to be an episode later in the season, so I'll be interested to see what happens there. That's probably Tom's big episode, so I'm curious what's going to go down with that. That's kind of exciting setup there. Now I want to shift to everything. Before we finish off with everything, that big episode with Kendall, I want to talk to you about stuff that happened here with Roman. So Roman gets into tyrant mode. This is the bad side of Roman. This is the stuff that was predicted for people who ever saw Roman ever become a CEO, which he's co-CEO here. This is where his faults start to shine, where he's just firing people left and right. But the difference is his father would do this, but I think his father had a better instinct for it, like Ken does, an instinct, right? Where I think Roman's missing that. He's just firing people, but not thinking straight and doing it. They're not smart firings. Like him firing the studio executive, Joy Palmer. Shout out Annabeth Gesh. She's really cool. I interviewed her this year. Great actress. You can check that interview out on my channel. But Roman barely gives her a minute. You know, she's not giving him the answers he wants and just fires her. And that could be dangerous because, again, like Jerry tells him, this is someone who has connections they're dealing with. I don't think that's the best idea. That can have bad implications later on. And then he fires Jerry for not agreeing with him and not respecting him, he says. Especially the line saying he's not his dad. And I love when he fires her and tells Kendall this. Kendall's like, Jerry, Shiv's godmother, Jerry, you fired? But there is an angle to it too, right? Maybe this works out as Kendall angles it. Like, hey, maybe it's a dynamic duo shakeup here, getting the senior leadership team out. And that could be angled as these young Turks might just have what it takes to turn things around. So that's a good point by Kendall. That's interesting, and I wonder if they'll actually lean into that. Now, I really want to break down, though, everything going on with Kendall here and relating to Kendall with Roman and Shiv. Now, just from the start of this episode, if you watch what happens to Kendall, Kendall is reading the brochure for Living Plus, and he notes the personalized longevity programs. He goes, what is that? Is that something? So it is a great idea by Kendall. He just actually does the work here and reads through this whole thing and sees if they have any gold here, and he finds the gold. He runs off of that, and he has that kind of vision where he's like, let's just shoot for the stars here. Unbelievable growth. Drive the price, make the deal impossible to Mattson. And he's running off this info that he can't go over 192, Mattson. So Kendall is making quick decisions and just going for it. He's not hesitating. And it's interesting that Roman actually helped him a lot here too, because Roman's the one who said, why not live forever? Why not go with that angle? And that works. And Kendall goes, okay. And that's what they play on, is, as Tom references as, this pitch for eternal life. Who doesn't want that? And I think Roman really liked this idea too, because he says, you know, Dad's death was unexpected. Who wants death? He doesn't. So that's where I think it hurts Roman so much more about his decision to not back Kendall here even more, because he did really like the idea. Now you see Greg just wants good graces with anybody here. That's why he's so pushy to the editor to change up what Logan is saying in the video. Instead of significant boost, make it say double the earnings. This was a Kendall idea, and a great idea at that. I found it interesting too that he makes a great decision like this. One of his actually not strong decisions was doing this practical stage, having these cloud effects. That was old Kendall kicking in. That doesn't work. I like that it actually worked out for him that they didn't have this, and I think he knows that now. Like, hey, you know what? Just go straight up and be real. That's what Kendall is in his best state, is being real. That's his strength. And it actually worked out from the end that his idea with the clouds didn't happen. That isn't his strong suit, the showy part of Kendall. It's more the real part. And that's what I think really sold this. And that's where it didn't work out here for Roman, because he's seeing that fall apart, the practical set, and it's scaring him, those clouds, like, oh no, this is Kendall collapsing again. And that's what Shiv's feeding on, that doubt that Roman has, because that's what Shiv really believes. He's just going to collapse again. Roman wasn't there at that moment, but it was coming into his head, that doubt, and that's where he was fed by Shiv to, you know, follow that doubt, and that's where Roman got scared again. Like, yeah, Kendall does mess up in these kind of situations, and it's looking like this, especially with this stage and this practical set not looking good. And you see how heartbroken Kendall is when Roman isn't backing him anymore and is telling him maybe to cut it and not do this. And he even had a co-pilot jacket made for Roman. Now, looking back, hindsight's 2020, so Roman's seeing like, that could have been me up there killing it, having the two co-pilots and the jackets. He missed big time here. And you see that Kendall even says, it's time, it's big swing time. This is why I believe all along Logan knew Kendall was the one to replace him. These kind of moments, these big decisions that Roman Shiv just don't do. They're too conservative for it, fearful. And moments that I think is so much like his father is when Carl lays into Ken. And he's like, if you try to screw up this deal or stand up numbers I'm not comfortable with. And he goes, whoa, 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 easy, CFO. I'm CEO. And he doesn't back down at this intimidation by Carl. That is like his father the most. And again, how they toy with the audience, how they toy in with our characters, and where Shiv's a stand-in for us, Roman's a stand-in for us, everyone watching in that room backstage, where he's saying, big shoes, and Roman has this great line, big shoes, big hat, big nervous breakdown. And they're all talking like, oh, this is classic Kendall collapsing. And even how Roman says to Shiv, like, she's wet over watching him collapse. And even when he brings out the dad at first, and him talking to his dad on screen, they're all like cringing. And you see even Greg saying to Tom, right, like, oh, you're just gonna have a mop-up job there. You don't have to worry about your speech. But it's gonna turn quickly, the tune fast here. And that's important with Greg calling him out, saying that, like, literally no one in this room is believing in Kendall at this moment. Calling him amateur. Everybody's calling him amateur, even Jerry. But the mood starts to change right when he starts giving his pitch about living plus. It's a great idea he leaned into about the living forever, but he also gets into the Kendall zone here. This is Kendall at its best. He's being real. He's like, what if I told you you're going to last forever? And Shiv even says at this moment, like, okay, now we're leaving planet Earth. Glad you aren't strapped in, Roman. But again, this is the wrong instinct by Shiv here. She's wrong on this. And Roman deep down knows it. And you see, he's talking about health, happiness. These are all good things to say. Fun, longevity, safety. And you see Mattson is threatened by this. He doesn't like it. And this is going to cause Mattson's ego to kind of backfire on him here. This is threatening to him, and then he has that tweet that comes out that's just poor taste. And you see, though, with the mood changing, now Tom's nervous following this up. And it's interesting, this line, he says, would I take an extra year with my dad, say the unsaid? That would be priceless. That was really the hook right there to the investors, and I do believe there was some truth there with Kendall, and that he's seeing some kind of light, and maybe just his blood of his father in him, that maybe he can appreciate a little more. And when the investor in the audience says about the tweet to Kendall that Mattson did, this is also just good news for Kendall, and he plays it right. That he doesn't totally support Mattson and say like, oh, okay, everything's gonna be good with Mattson. No, like, he angles it in a way there's an open door that he doesn't worry about it. He doesn't make a big deal about it, which was smart. And I love the humorous moment here, Tom coming on the stage now, all nervous, how to follow that. And he's like, you're an ATN citizen, and you're an ATN citizen, and I'm an ATN citizen. It's just a jokey performance that he was practicing with the index cards before. Just shows you the difference. And I love when they're all clapping for Kendall and he comes in, how fake and phony everybody is, right? Like, Greg was like, I was here cheering you on, which he wasn't. And Carl literally saying to everybody, he's special, and I know special, even though he just threatened him backstage before this. And you see Roman angrily nudges Shiv. It could have been him right in this moment getting praised with Kendall. And you get this payoff here where Kendall sends the clip to Roman in the car of his dad that he edited to say Roman has a micro dick and always gets it wrong. Ouch. And you see Kendall draws the one in the sand, and now he's in the water floating upward, right? Like I said, this is a case of Kendall's highs are really high. That's what we're seeing in this episode, not the lows of lows, where you see the floating upward is the opposite of when he was floating downward in that pool with that, however you want to read it, intentional, unintentional, suicidal moment at his lowest point. So we're seeing that flip. It's really interesting. It's interesting if could him killing someone come into play here. That would be the thing that can kill this all for Kendall. But at this moment, it's a huge win for him. He's on top. And I think, it, as I said, as a viewer, it was very satisfying because we're always seeing him lose Kendall. So it was good to see that he's had good ideas. He's had good qualities about him as just a business person. And here you see the winning of that and that paying off. So it was nice to see that and satisfying as someone as me who's a Kendall fan in particular in the show. So I really thought this was a strong episode in general. And it's going to be interesting to see how Roman reacts to this at the end of the day, where Shiv goes from this, and especially with the relationship with Tom, and what happens with the two of them, and what I think Mattson's going to be pushed out now. And it's going to be interesting because this is about halfway, clearly, of the show, so we only got a couple episodes left, and we're getting to the end game here. But I was really satisfied as a whole, and just for Kendall's arc. This felt great, and I'm interested to see if he can stay on top. Maybe not. Could he implode like Kendall usually does? Could him and this incident happening with the killing, with the waiter, come backfire to him? We'll see. But I'm interested to hear your theories on that, what you guys want to see, what you thought of this episode. But to me, I love this one, and it just keeps rolling this season. Like I'm saying, it's clearly far and away now just the best season. I don't care what anyone says. This is a 9.7 for me, and every episode's been over 9, but this has just been a special season, and I'm really happy that, I guess, yeah, now I'm looking at it, I said maybe they can keep going on, but maybe, you know what, it's smart they're ending the show here because it's giving us such a satisfying season, them getting out early on top. So I'll take it. So yeah, 9.7. And as always, Jeremy Strong here, just amazing. I'm going to miss this show. I'm going to miss this character. So I was just really excited about this. So let me know what you thought, though, if you're feeling the same way, if you're feeling different. I love to hear your thoughts. I read every comment. I try to respond as many as I can. And please subscribe. I'm trying to hit that 30K. Like I said, it would mean so much. It helps me. You have no idea. And please follow me on Steve Varley Show on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok for more of me. And I'll see you next time.